few months of me chasing my dream of building a company, and it hasn't been easy. I'm at a point where I think I'm going to wind and meld it down. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I wanted to share some really valuable lessons that I think can help you in your entrepreneurial journey and probably just in life. You know, the Y Combinator ethos is to build something that people want. And what I'd add to that is to build something people want with good margins and scalability. Because sometimes you can build something that people really want, like a highly customized like a shoe. But if you can't deliver that at scale, if you can't create that with good margins, it's going to be hard to turn into a business. So what you work on is more important than how hard you work, right? I think a lot of the times we just optimize for passion, and we think passion will make the hard work easier. Like if you love what you do, you won't work for a day in your life, that kind of thing. But if you choose the wrong idea, and there is oftentimes a wrong idea, like trying to build a newspaper business today instead of 50 years ago, you will suffer. Stamina and consistency is more important than short bursts of intense work. There were several weeks, several months where I had a day here, a day there of short, intense work. And I think while it was important to push things forward over the long term, it's really about managing your energy levels and trying to go at a sustainable pace. I think we always go back to balance. So of course there will be some times, maybe it's the summer, take your foot off the gas pedal, and then at another time you step on it, but ultimately it's that consistency that'll bring you the results you want. The grass is not always greener on the other side. The grass is where you water it, right? I suffered many times from shiny object syndrome, where I'd be chasing new things here and there, and I was distracted. I always thought there was a better opportunity out there. When I saw the most results and the most impact when I just focused on the thing I was trying to nurture. There's always going to be something you want to do that is not the main thing, but keep the main thing the main thing. Managing your dopamine levels. I think this is important for work and for life, because dopamine is one of the brain chemicals that has to do with motivation. And if you don't keep your dopamine levels balanced, you're going to crash and you're not going to feel motivated, you're not going to feel focused. So watching porn, scrolling on social media, that messes your dopamine levels up. And not just in that moment, but it can even impact the next day. So really manage your dopamine levels carefully. Don't half-ass it, as Matthew McConaughey say it, okay? If you do something, go all out, because you don't want to regret the future moment where you're looking back on the thing you're doing and wondering or thinking, like, I could have worked a little harder. You don't want to be in that state. Simplicity is more important than complexity. Simplicity should always be the goal, because it is in human nature to make things complex. We want to keep adding things, keep taking on more projects, keep trying new products, but when you simplify, not only do you make the operations, the product better, you make the marketing better, people understand what you're doing, and simplicity and even subtracting things is actually harder than complexity. And I learned this from the book called Insanely Simple. It's about Apple's core ethos of making things really simple. Learning compounds. So I worked on Imelda for a whole year, which might not seem long to you, but for me, it was the longest I've ever committed to one single project. And I realized that when you commit to one project, that learning compounds so much. And so by month 10, the things I was learning was way more advanced than trying 5 or 6 different projects and going shallow. And then the last very painful lesson is to try to do more things yourself. take on more. Stop trying to outsource, especially when you're building a business from the beginning. Because, and I have a well-paying job and made me less self-reliant and spend too much time and money trying to hire freelancers, outsourcing, when I should have just been trying to do things myself, especially the non-technical, abstract, high-level stuff like strategy. I will caveat that I do think consultants have their place, but just be careful with leaning on them too much. One more technical nitty-gritty thing about why I think hasn't really worked in the form that it is in today, which is capturing wedding memories, turning it into a physical book. I think that whenever you introduce something physical, then it becomes about acquisition costs and figuring out how to turn that customer into a long time customer. So increasing the LTV, and then it looks all right. I think is more of a service business, like being a wedding planner, being a vendor. We're constantly trying to get new clients, constantly delivering. That is the opposite kind of business of what I want to do. All right, so I should have realized, but a really important lesson. And I think at this stage in my life and with those experiences, every new business idea, I have more and more things to push this idea through in terms of a criteria, a checklist. And the important detail there is that everyone has a different checklist. Maybe you want to build a lifestyle business. This guy wants to build a venture capital backed business. Totally different criteria because they as a human being are very different. But that is why taking action is so important. I would have not known what criteria I want in the next business I want to build if I didn't try Imelda. So to wrap things up, I don't think Imelda is really working right now, but I don't think there is such thing as a real failure because there were so many lessons from Imelda and it was such a wonderful journey. It was very painful, but I think you grow the most from pain, from taking action. And of course, pain plus reflection is progress. Lastly, some life lessons from building Imelda. Number one is to protect your relationships at all costs. And now, I just listened to an episode between Trevor Noah and Federer talks about how there are a lot of young athletes who ask him for life advice. And he always tells them to nurture those friendships and those relationships, especially at home, because when you retire and you go home, if you don't invest in those relationships, you're going to come back to an empty house. And I'm very proud of how I have approached that aspect of my life, because no matter how busy I was, no matter how hard I was working or even training for the triathlon, I always made time for my family and my friends. And looking back on this year, I can say without a doubt, they are still the most important aspect of my life, which I love. I love my life. I feel like I'm living a very happy, rich, pretty balanced, fulfilling life. And it's mostly like a huge part of it comes down to the relationships I have with the people I love. And then the second life lesson is that the effort is actually the reward. I get to work on something like Imelda. I get to build something hard because related to the kind of triathlon that I did earlier this year, 99% of this triathlon experience was the training. And if you can't enjoy the training, I think doing it for that one moment where you cross the line is not very fulfilling. I mean, it might motivate you, but really the bulk of it is that training portion. So I think it's important to recognize that the climb is the reward. And maybe lastly is it's building Imelda, one of the hardest things I've done for sure. And I think to myself about how life is suffering. So Just do something worth suffering for. Because if I was just hanging out and chilling, I would be suffering in my own way. I'd feel lost, I'd feel anxious, restless maybe. And there's something about human nature that where challenges will just naturally come up. If you are going to be a human being and life will be hard, might as well try to do the thing that is authentic to you and that is worth fighting for. Counter argument to that is you don't need to suffer. Suffering is maybe coming from too much desire, and perhaps you should desire less. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I think it's about being self-aware and kind of knowing what you want in life, and ultimately getting to the end of your life and not having any regrets. With that, using that regret minimization framework that Bezos talks about. So that's a wrap. I'm gonna keep making more of these videos, and also just focusing more on having fun with this. I was talking to my social media manager and telling her about how, man, like I'm kind of sick of trying to build something for a niche and create some program, some course that I don't give a shit about. I just want to make videos that are meaningful, that are fun to me, that I'm proud of, that excite me. So there you go. See you guys around.